Hi, today we're going to be talking about transitions and coherence, especially as it pertains to your argument essay. At this point in the semester, we've talked a lot about transitions and making sure that there is that flow to our essay. But for this essay, I really want to make sure that we take it to the next level and really think about how our different parts, our different sources, our different ideas, our different reasons all connect. And I say chapter 8, they give you a lot of good details and suggestions for this. And they start with an example of these two sentences. Spot is a good dog, he has fleas. Now, if you were to take these two sentences by themselves, there's definitely a connection, but it doesn't necessarily jump out at you. You know both these sentences are about Spot, just two things about him. But this could be a lot more specific if we added some transitionary material. For instance, Spot is a good dog, but he has fleas, shows that the fact that he has fleas is less important than the fact that he's a good dog, right? Spot is a good dog, but he has fleas, okay? So yes, that's a characteristic that's definitely impacting that he's a good dog. Whereas Spot is a good dog even though he has fleas is putting even more focus on the fact that he's a good dog, even less focus on he has fleas, okay? So think about it like this. Both cases, Spot is a good dog. But this first one, Spot is a good dog, but he has fleas, a little bit more focus on the negative aspect than we get in the second one, okay? So Spot is a good dog, but he has fleas. Spot is a good dog even though he has fleas. The only difference with these original sentences are these words that we've added, but and even though. Pretty simple, but they definitely show a strong connection through the language choices. So make sure that you're thinking about that with your own sentences, how these little differences can have a huge impact on how your reader interprets your sentence. So there's several ways to do what they show on page 107 of They Say, I Say, having those hands holding your last sentence to your next sentence, ways to connect the parts of your thoughts. The first one is the most simple. That's on starting on page 108, using transitions. Okay, they give you a lot of different types of transition words and phrases. So addition, words like indeed, also, and, example, after all, as an illustration. All of these different transitionary words act as really good links between sentences and within parts of a sentence. So what we had with but and even though served as transitions. So think about how these different words can do that for you. Some specific things to keep in mind, though, is different categories of transitions have different impacts. It's very different to say actually than it is to say although. Right? So make sure that you're thinking about how those transition words work. Next is what we call pointing words. That starts on page 112. Pointing words are grammatically pronouns. Okay, words like those, their, he, she, it, etc. that point to something that you previously said. Right? So if you go back to our original sentence, Spot is a good dog, he has fleas. He is a pointing word because it's pointing back to Spot. It's pointing back to something I already said. If I simply said, he has fleas, he doesn't mean a whole lot. You don't know what's being talked about. But Spot is a good dog, he has fleas, serving as a pointing word. And already, even without the transitionary word, these two sentences are connected. It shows that I'm continuing to talk about the same idea. Okay? So that's what pointing words do for you. And it gives you some other examples in the book of how exactly that works, but those transitionary words help show connections. Next, key terms and phrases. This is a little bit different than pointing words. This is where you keep using certain terms and words to make your reader think about something that you've already talked about. On page 114, they give an example of Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail, where he repeats certain words like statement, criticism, and answer several times because it reminds the reader that everything in the composition is related. So you need to think about in your own essay, what are some key words, key phrases that can be repeated throughout the essay, not overdone. You don't want to say the same word in every single sentence, of course. Right? If I had 5 sentences about Spot, I wouldn't say Spot is a good dog. Spot has fleas. Spot likes to drink water. That would get repetitive. But having those words repeated several times throughout the essay definitely makes your reader think about it again and makes them say, hey, I read about that in the last paragraph. Creates that link, that thread that creates coherence. And finally, on page 116, repeating yourself but with a difference. Some of the things we've already talked about fall into this category, like pronouns is repeating yourself with a difference. But if you look on page 117, middle paragraph, in addition, when you use transition phrases like in other words and to put it another way, you repeat yourself with a difference, since these phrases help you restate earlier claims but in a different register. So anytime in your essay where you put some information and then you want to explain it in a slightly different way, hopefully in a clearer way for your reader to make sure that they really get what you're going for, you're using this coherence building tool. Okay, because once again, it's showing your reader that what you just talked about is linked to what you're now talking about. And a word and phrases like in other words is what makes your reader clear that you're not repeating yourself accidentally. It's that it's purposeful. They know that, oh, you're further explaining something, offering elaboration. Okay, so if we think about these 4 techniques in our essays, okay, so that we have good coherence with everything we write. Transitions, pointing words, key terms and phrases, and repeating yourself, but with a difference. We can really make sure that our essay flows, it has the coherence, and thus our reader has a much more enjoyable but also meaningful experience reading our essays.